What made you realize your family was just a bunch of people you know and not all of them will be your friends? Luke 5119 said, my mom's side of the family and dad's side of the family are polar opposite regarding how they approach confrontation or addressing people. Dad's side is the I'm gonna wait until you leave so I can talk about you do that bothers me behind your back. Mom's side is the I'm gonna tell you to your face how I feel about what you're doing, but I'll be tactful about it, and at least with full transparency, you know where I stand. I prefer hanging out with my mom's side a lot more. There aren't family grudges and any arguments are mended quickly and laughed about later. Gummaran said, my dad's side of the family just refuses to acknowledge their own and each other's problems. Thanks to all that, my dad always puts the burden of his frustration onto others and he's just completely incapable of accepting he is wrong or apologizing in any way. If you come out on top in an argument against him, which takes a while because he'll just kinda keep cycling through the same arguments cause he doesn't even listen to your counter-arguments, he'll sigh, shake his head and walk away like he's supposed to be the better person even though 9/10 times it's an argument he started and 11/10 times he'll start the discussion up again after an hour after he has thought of some new arguments. Max Adam said, I had it but in the opposite. I was shy in my teenagers and wasn't very emotionally intelligent. My shyness could make me look like an asshole that didn't care about others. One day I was packing to go back to college without saying bye to the other part of my family. My mother told me go visit you uncles and aunts, they love you. Those last 3 words made me instantly realize something I've been ignoring all this time. It gave me flashbacks of the many gestures of affection that my family had towards me that I didn't appreciate. At that moment my eyes got watery from thinking about it. I lacked empathy. Dynatrox said, I have at least mostly gotten past the effects of very emotionally neglectful parents, though they never put any demands or expectations upon me. Hard to say how different that would make it as I had still put unreasonable demands and expectations on myself. I would sum it up as, accept them for who they are. They are people too, they are not perfect, and there may be a lot of unresolved things that they have gone through in their lives that they have not shared. At least for me part of this was accepting that they had tried, and that was enough, regardless of what I think about how hard or intelligently they tried. There should be no different level of expectations placed upon them compared to that of an acquaintance or casual friend. Waiting, hoping, actively trying to get them to change, grow is just not helpful or realistic. Don't put a level of expectation upon oneself any higher than you would ever put on another person. It just doesn't really make any sense to do this. It's almost purely a recipe for pain and not much else. Except that it is overwhelmingly your responsibility to support and maintain yourself emotionally. Like in a core sort of way, we all need social contact and some level of support from others, but that should not be the majority of support, and at least for me can be very minimal. Stop neglecting oneself. This was easily the hardest and longest step for me. The self-neglect ran probably as deep as the neglect from the parents. Steps 1-3 were pretty much one and done for me. This last step was, and perhaps still is a bit, a repeating cycle of damping ups and downs. For me, just keep going. Doing other stuff was overwhelmingly an avoidance mechanism to avoid working anything out internally. Misty Strawberries said, same experience for me, while recovering from the long-term effects of COVID-19. My friend's mom, a total stranger who I've never met, sent me a care package full of vitamins, a heating pad, and a snuggly snow leopard that can be heated up and smells like lavender. I sobbed when I opened the package. My own family mocked my woe is me bullshit and told me to get over it and move on. Your 11 years younger cousin was sick and was fine afterward. Move on. I still take heart medication daily. What the fuck? Resection Inks Honor 31 said, yeah. The implication is one day you may need them. How many life-changing favors have you called in from these relatives pestering you about the next step in your life? For me, literally zero. I actually ghosted my family though, so maybe I am an extreme example, no falling out or anything. I just didn't see a point in keeping up this charade for maybe a $12.47 payout 10 years down the line. Edit. I am talking about the nosy fuckers you hardly see, but somehow feel entitled to pry into your life like some NSA agent trying to solve a crime. Again, I'm not advocating to block your extended family. I'm just saying you probably will notice no difference in your life with or without them if they are the annoying, noisy, pestering traditional types anyway, lol. Plus, They can circle jerk themselves all fine without me. Win-win for everyone in my books. Elebrin said. When we get that question we say yes. And leave it at that. If they follow up and ask when it will be, I tell them that they will find out after. And that is our plan. We are gonna travel somewhere nice, get married, come back and tell our families. At least a few people are disappointed, but they will deal with it. We had a date picked, but we got engaged in February of 2020, we've had to replan a lot. We aren't going to do international travel with COVID still being a thing, so we have to figure out where in the US we are going, and we want to wait until most places are pretty well opened up and more people are vaccinated. Princess Moonbutt said. I tell this to my boyfriend and good friends all the time. I'd invite them along to family stuff if I actually thought they'd enjoy it. Self-organized get-togethers where it's just me and a few cousins I'm close with. Those are awesome parties. I'll take a day off work to recover after. But extended family Christmases, Thanksgivings, or just routine family reunions can be tedious. Mostly because I'm one of the few family members who's old enough to do stuff, but doesn't have kids. So it's oh can you bring, you'll have space in your car right, or oh can you watch the little ones for a bit so that have a chance to grab some food and relax a bit. I just stopped going altogether but I don't want to cause friction and alienate the people that I do like spending time with. I look forward to those events the same way I look forward to doctor's visits, spring cleaning, or annual reviews at work. The Queen of England said. I've got this right now, but it's friends rather than family because I don't live near my family. I've had 4 weeks in a row where I've been to a party, first mine, then 3 friends consecutively, this weekend another friend, the following my boyfriend's having a party at our house, the next weekend another friend's birthday, then I think I might have 1 weekend. Then I go to see my family for 2 weeks that I haven't seen since pre-pandemic. Then I come back, have 1 weekend, then go away for a 4-day weekend with friends, then have a free weekend and then have agreed to a 30-mile charity walk. People might wonder why I said yes to all of this, but I didn't realize how many things I'd agreed to, and literally all of these parties are either close friends 40 THS, 3 of those, BFS close friends 50 THS, a party for a guy with a terminal illness that might not be here next year, a weekend away that my old school friends and I have been paying for since before lockdown, parents I haven't seen for more than a year. I'm absolutely knackered already, and it's only 3 down in what feels like a million to 2. On top of this, I'm an introvert. But they have also been fun so far, so that's good. I'm not looking forward to how fat my arse will be with this much partying. I think it may be a symptom of having had 3 lockdowns. Everyone went a bit mad with the party's invites. A 4-day work week would help. Ben Hates Me said. There are a lot of reasons, however the one that spread the icing on the cake and lit the candles was a few years ago when my dad went to prison. My family, which always met for Thanksgiving and Christmas and played inside jokes on each other at the strike of a bell, fell out. My brother and I received only a call from our grandmother informing us that our father was sent to prison. Not a single member reached out to console or just check in. That year Thanksgiving wasn't even discussed. The same happened with Christmas. I was 17 without a driver's license and had to wait several months to see my grandma, and she burst into tears when my aunt brought me to her and told me she was so scared she would never see me again, which would have been especially hard since we were seeing each other on a bi-weekly basis for about 10 years. My grandmother's siblings totally dropped her, and her only brother figured she should give her property to his eldest son and move to Arizona. That was, as far as I understand, the first time he spoke with her for months after my father's initial sentencing. I moved to Germany and have only heard from my immediate family and my grandma per post since she had no phone. Super cute. They chose to leave us alone entirely. I chose to move on, and what do you know? I have found the most amazing and valuable people in my life so far. Pick your family as you would pick a weapon for battle. What fits you and serves you well? Thismitter said. When my mom remarried and tried to get me to accept my step-family by using the phrase "you don't get to pick family." The dissonance of that idea and the fact that she literally just picked family made me realize that the notion of family has been used against us for far too long. Pick your family and live happily. 1C Ninja said. When my so is having a bad mental health day and is worried that my feelings for her aren't genuine, a notion she immediately realizes is ridiculous once she can think clearly, but depression is a bitch. I just remind her that I chose her. I clearly admitted when we met that I had multiple dating prospects, and she clearly admitted all her mental health issues right up front, and I chose her anyway, because the whole package was worth it. It is 10x more meaningful to have chosen somebody to be your family, knowing all the ups and downs that come with that, rather than being assigned to someone by birth. Amy Hartsu said, "My mother abused my sister and I a lot when we were younger. At 17 I finally stood up to her and was thrown out on my own for it. My family didn't immediately exclude me, but they did take her side. I was a shameful and ungrateful child, and she was somehow the victim. As time went on, I was excluded from a lot of family stuff, partly by them, partly by my own choice. One year I showed up for Christmas dinner at my aunt's house and realized they weren't even people I know. They were people I used to know, but I wasn't one of them. I stopped showing up for family gatherings. No one ever reached out to me, or tried to include me, and I realized that had been the case for a while already. They had been ready to just let me go, and once I realized it, I went. That Christmas was 14 years ago, and it was the last time I saw or spoke to most of them. For daring to believe that I didn't deserve to live in fear while being abused physically, psychologically, and emotionally, I no longer have any family, except for one sister, on my father's side, that is not my mother's daughter." Ambrosia Dukes said, "When my cousin dated my ex of 3 years 3 days after we broke up, told my entire dad's side he only dated me to get to her, and that I was selling porn I made with him. Wasn't. I was only 17 too, and they all made fun of me for it. I was forced to go to her wedding a few years later, different guy she married, and didn't even speak to her. They all blocked me and haven't spoken to me since. I plan to never see them again until our grandfather or my father passes away." House Renovations said, "When my grandma passed and we all just really stopped making the effort to get together. She was kind of the linchpin that held us together. I realized that I was seeing many extended family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews, more out of obligation than desire. I really don't miss any of them. I'm a firm believer that you create your own family, which is exactly what I did in the years following my grandmother's passing." Now with More Chocolate said, "I would have literally attacked her, with the strength of a 6-year-old girl. Mom threw away all but 2 of my soft toys when I was 11 because it was time to grow up, and I literally called both child services and the police. Obviously neither did anything. Although I will give her props for an event that happened when I was younger. Dad had a fun game of hiding my favorite soft toy, Sooty from Sooty and Company, every April Fool's Day. I told him countless times that I hated it, but he continued. This all ended at age 10 when I ran into him downstairs as he was trying to hide Sooty. I grabbed the bear, Dad held on, and we both pulled. Sooty's arm ripped off and I screamed as if it had been my own arm. Mom rushes downstairs, sees what has happened, and goes ballistic on Dad. I've told you 1,000 times she hates when you hide him, and now look what you've done. Mom stitched Sooty's arm back on like a champ and told me Dad would never try to hide Sooty again. Dad apologized and brought me KFC that night and never hid my toys again. It was also the only night that I have ever seen Mom kick Dad out of the bedroom and have him sleep on the sofa." Max49 said, "Same with my dad's family. Dad's dad died of liver failure due to alcoholism and painkillers when my dad was a teen. Eldest sister died drunk driving, luckily didn't take anyone with her. Youngest sister killed herself via OD shortly after their mom died. Other sister is still around but is on her 4th marriage like mom. At least she isn't a widow 4x over like her mom. Ever since I was in college, I concluded that my dad is a loser. I have wanted my parents to get divorced for half my lifetime, but my mom stupidly sticks with him. No surprise a lot of friends dumped her because they can't do couples things since they don't want my loser dad around." Cupcake 117 said, "My mother died when I was 5 years old. Being born a girl, my grandparents thought it was inappropriate for my father to raise me, so they tried to rip me away. My father remarried, and my grandparents were extremely opposed to it. After a 7-year-long custody battle, they were still salty about it. Enough to condone my father's many infidelities. And turn a blind eye. Which was shocking to me because we've all been brought up strictly Catholic. After I turned 18, I thought I would be free from all this family bullshit, but no, oh no. They still wanted control. 'Cause now they're too old, 2 out of 3 of their children are disabled. My aunt and father, and their eldest son wants nothing to do with them. Now they need a caregiver. My only brother, they neglected and overprotected him so much so that he can't be a functioning adult. And in order to survive, joined in on the campaign that I'm a horrible human being for not taking up the mantle of woman of the house and taking care of them all and looking after the family estate. These people are not my family. Brandon Amanerd said, as the one who was expected to be caregiver, I feel this pretty hard. I was the younger one and the more responsible one, mostly because I don't think I realized no was an option. Over the years living with my grandmother, there was breast cancer, heart surgery, bandage changes, fluid drains and reports for the visiting doctor. I did it all and I did the best that an 15-year-old gal could do when taking care of a senior citizen. I realized eventually that I was expected to just stay living there my whole life until they died so I could watch them. No dating, work was only on the table because I insisted I needed to, in order to get out of the house, and I dropped out of college as I'd get calls at all hours at work with them lamenting how sad and lonely they were feeling. It was really awful in hindsight, and I can't imagine who I would be if I stayed. Eventually my mother died and my brother was all tears about how he couldn't do it alone, and then I didn't hear from him for a month. At my mother's funeral he bragged about how hard he worked to make this service happen. I paid for it all out of pocket, prayer cards, obituary, cremation, transportation of the remains, funeral costs, and that comment cemented things for me and I started looking for apartments shortly afterwards. I haven't spoken to them in ages. Drakmanka said, don't remember a time when the penny dropped for me. Maybe being adopted had something to do with it, but I've never had the whole blood ties thing to disillusion me to what a family really is. I've got loads of aunts and uncles thanks to both my adoptive parents coming from huge families. I've got somewhere on the order of 27 first cousins, and I've never bothered to try to calculate second cousins. It's a lot of people. Of all these people, I actually felt comfortable around and liked by maybe 12 of them, not including immediate family. And of those 12, I keep in actual contact with about 3 of them. 2 cousins and an aunt, said cousin's mom. I have family, and I have what I've named my true family, which is people I've chosen to be family who have also chosen me. I'm closer to these people than a lot of married folks are to their spouses. A little bonus info, I've actually contacted my biological family. COVID has put the kibosh on getting to know them in person much, but I've had a few correspondences here and there and met both my half-sisters and my 2 nephews from my younger sister. There was definitely something special between us, but I think it's because we had all spent most of our lives wondering about if we would ever meet and all of us wanted it to go well. I would say they're part of my chosen family. I just haven't gotten to spend as much time with them as I'd like thanks to a microscopic killer Velcro ball. Tube Average said, I can't remember when I realized it, but I remember the day I gave up trying to build a relationship or hopes of a future friendship. I had gone through a massive depressive episode where I had spent the last month doing everything that was asked of me without any complaints, literally not saying anything, and just contemplating suicide while I'd sit silently in the living room with my family. I went THR entire time with only occasionally uttering okay and absolutely nothing else. After a while I actually attempted suicide and failed, tried hanging myself in a park, and I walked home. My mom flipped her shit about me not coming straight home after school and I yelled back at her as much as I could. We went back and forth and I remember her main argument point was, you've been so good the last month, what's changed now? Why can't you always be like you've been this past month? That's the daughter I love and I don't understand why you can't be like that all the time. And it just clicked for me that the past month while I had been thinking of suicide and in a depressive episode just going through the motions and absolutely miserable, she had seen it as an improvement and that she only loved me when I obeyed her every command without question or comment. Tube Average said, so yeah, I never had a good relationship or even a relationship to begin with my family, but they all just kind of showed in different ways throughout the years that we don't get along, and if we hadn't been living together then I would have never even talked to them in the first place. Edit. For the people that have asked, the main point of the story was that it made me realize that no one knew me or bothered to ever try knowing me. I had been depressed before that month, but that one month in particular had me in a depressive episode where I just have up any attempt to explain myself or do anything that made me happy, life worth living. And I had realized after the argument that I couldn't remember the last time anyone had asked how I was or if I was okay, and I knew that the only interaction I had gotten from my family during that time was orders of what chore to do next or where to sit when I wasn't doing chores. My family and I had a very strained relationship, and I had spent many years telling myself that if I was enough or better then they'd reciprocate love and attempts at understanding. So after my mom told me that, I realized that I was trying to get a brick wall to say I love you. I had told my mom during different instances that I was depressed or thinking of suicide, and for years it was met with lectures about how she's the one who should be depressed, how I had nothing to be depressed about, and how if I committed suicide then it'd reflect poorly on her and it'd spiral into her eventually crying and wanting to know why I hated her so much that I'd make people think she was a bad mother. Zanky said, I kinda did the same to my mom. I just stopped talking. I was very unhappy. Life sucked and I just kinda stopped talking completely. I just gave up. Bullies still went after me in school. Mom would come home and just start screaming at me, sometimes trying to hit me, destroying whatever she could get her hands on. I said nothing the entire time. I did my chores. I did my schoolwork. I did everything right, and she still just didn't stop. I never asked for anything. I didn't see anyone outside of school, never got in trouble at that point. Worst I did was shout out and not sit still in class. Somehow I was just this awful person who must be screamed at, hit, have their stuff destroyed, because there is no way their kid isn't bad, because if they aren't bad then they've been a horrible mother. No one noticed I just shut down. No one noticed I'd completely stopped talking. I think the only sound that came from my mouth were yells at karate, because if I didn't, sensei would have given me punishment push-ups. My life sucked back then. Mac 2311 said, my parents divorced when I was a baby, and both were married before I was 3. Sadly, both sides kinda pushed taking care of me at one another. It made me feel like I was a problem child, where in truth I got average grades, never really caused a problem, and was pretty quiet. Well, my bio-dad and his family are best described as Christian cult members, and luckily by my senior year I was able to move in with my mom and stepdad. I always looked up to my stepdad, businessman, personable and all around well liked by everyone. I went and joined the Marines in 03, and he, from what I heard, was very proud. Never heard it from him. Emotionally he is pretty shut down and doesn't say many of those types of things. He has told my mom that he sees me as his son. All good, I would think. Well, I got out of the military honorably about 12 years ago. Since moving back into the area I have tried to reach out to him in different ways. I took up some of his hobbies like golf for instance, and he always seemed like he wants to but puts no effort into actually setting down dates. We work at the same place also, a machining shop, and he will say something to me like, oh, you should try this restaurant out, and I would be interested, and he would say something like, I'll let you know next time we go, so I get all excited and then nothing, but then I'll see him with a carry out from said place and I wasn't told anything. Mac 2311 said, what hurt really recently is on Father's Day I texted him about us going golfing and maybe we could after work sometime. He said he would love to and we will talk when he sees me at work. I was so happy that I actually cried a little bit in front of my wife over it. Work came and went, saw him but didn't talk. I think, oh well, he's busy. I'll talk to him tomorrow and we can set a time. Will the days keep passing and it's fairly obvious he is avoiding me at this point. My heart is pretty broken up about it. I've been home 12 years and not once has he reached out to do anything with me besides saying things like we should do that sometime type things. I think I'm going to have to wash my hands of the only male bonding I could have in my family left. It hurts, but I'll tell you one thing, I have a 2-year-old son and I will never treat him in such a way. Him and my wife are my sole focus in life, and through thick and thin that will never change. My son will never feel unwanted or be cast aside. Haruki88 said, I never was really close with my parents and younger brother. But they always made sure I had everything I needed, food, good education, toys. But since they were really busy with their lives, we didn't do much together. When my younger brother was born, he's 10 years younger, we did more things together though. My father's family was strict and traditional, but they were okay when we went to visit them. But my mother's family seemed to ignore me when we went to visit them. I'm half Japanese, half Korean, but lived in Japan. Maybe because I never learned Korean, so I had trouble communicating with them. My father and I also didn't share their religion, Christian. When I was 21 years old, my mother kicked me out of the house when she discovered I'm gay. To her, I no longer exist. She has one son, my younger brother. I have limited contact with my father. I know that I'm not really a good son or a good older brother to them, but I see them no longer as my family. I do got a new family though. My partner, his parents, and his younger sister, replaced my real family. Ryashos said. Just read the last 4 paragraphs or something for a TLDR. I have a really odd relationship with my parents, specifically my mother now that dad's gone, that might require visits to a therapist to work out. Or maybe I'm just waiting for mom to pass away so I can move on. It all started when I was really young. Under 5.5, because after that age I left the country. I didn't want to eat all the food they gave me for dinner, so instead of dealing with it in a productive way, they locked me into a dark closet Harry Potter style for hours while I screamed and cried. When that didn't work, they locked me out of the apartment. Eventually I took the food into the toilet to flush it, because I'd rather do what little I could to at least make it look like I ate the food that I didn't want to eat. Guess what happened? Now it isn't like my entire life was abusive. It's more that whenever things don't go their way, they would yell and shout and nag and hit. I remember my youngest brother was a pre-toddler that didn't want to eat dinner food. So my dad lost his temper and smashed things up. My mom hit me until I was in my late teens and finally raised my hand to stop her strikes. Wow, was she not happy. Hit me several more times while I blocked her and stormed off. Ryashos said. You know what she did next? She came back later and showed me the bruises and marks on her hands from hitting me. Supposedly she's hurt too. Dad said I was a waste of money. One time, the 2 parents got their wires crossed. Dad had cooked dinner for everybody, but mom came home with KFC so that we could eat quickly and go to karate class. I feel like this is a common story that you can write the rest of the ending for. Parents make honest mistakes all the time. Well anyway, Dad felt like his efforts were wasted or that he wasn't appreciated and started yelling up a storm. My kid brother, who is now what, like 5? 6, started freaking out because he had never seen the parents do this before. I and my other brother were just sitting there silently waiting for it to be over. I will never forget my youngest brother crying. You remember that video of the young girl parentifying her parents? This wasn't like that. At least that kid had the state of mind to know what needed to change. My brother was just screaming stop it and losing his shit. Mom said we, all of us siblings, were not worth it. I'll never forget that you said that, Mom, never. I could probably write an entire saga in Asian parent stories as I remember the various examples. Most of it was just dealt with quietly in my head and hopefully forgotten. Ryashos said. My dad had a really bad temper, would yell for the weirdest things. Like his mother lived with us and they couldn't cook at the same time. She'd stand in his way or something and suddenly it's yelling, yelling, yelling. You might agree here and think too many chefs, but I can cook just fine with my brother. We take turns on the counter prepping food and rotate around the burners or cook each other's food for each other if it's easier. My middle brother has taken up that temper and I am terrified of my own temperance changing. I have a loud voice and I don't shout except when I'm pushed to my limit. My brother and his wife act like the perfect couple, but I know his temper leads to behind the door shouting matches just like Dad. I hate it. We get along whenever he visits, but there's always at least one incident where she does something just as innocuous as grandmother and boom the yelling. So I feel like my brother is just this relative that visits once in a while and not really a close friend. The problem with telling these stories is that on paper we are the perfect family. I have become an expert in maintaining face in the public. Mom and I share ownership over the house. I pay the mortgage. We travel together and get along in 80% of the case. She still nags me and I just ignore her. When she nags me about something that is out of line, I just walk away. My middle brother doesn't visit enough to affect anything. I tell my work he's the overseas brother working for big gaming corporation. I tell my friend's dad is the former Olympics judge sports coach who died of cancer. Ryashos said. It's funny cause as the siblings grew older it ended up being the middle one, the verbally abusive temper tantrum machine, who I am hesitant to bring up all of these events to. I don't want him to gaslight me and say it wasn't that bad, becoming the favorite. He has a wife and is living the extravagant life as the good married son living overseas, brag about the middle son. The oldest son hasn't gotten married or had kids yet. My youngest brother became my closest sibling. BC, we have the same opinions on stuff, but he's too young to remember these events, and he's like the sheltered baby brother who gets coddled. Dad passed away on my birthday. So on Father's Day we have to remember him. On my birthday it's all RIP Daddy, and I get ignored. I constantly struggle between my mom is trying her best, you're making a mountain out of a molehill, and you have real issues and they won't go away until you move out or she dies.